What price would you pay to save your family? For Liam Peterson, a 21-year-old law student drowning under the weight of his late father's debts and his mother's illness, the answer arrives in an unthinkable form. Vivienne Devereux, an enigmatic and immensely wealthy 73-year-old widow, offers him complete financial salvation. Every debt erased, his family's future secured. The catch? He must marry her. Not for love, she insists, but as a cold, calculated business arrangement. It's a lifeline he desperately needs, yet suspicion coils beneath the surface of her generosity. Are her motives pure? Or is this meticulously crafted proposal hiding decades of simmering resentment and a secret desire for revenge tied to his own family's past? Liam is about to step into a world of opulent secrets where salvation might look disturbingly like a gilded cage. His story begins on a rain-slicked Texas street with a phone call that will change everything. The sky over Denton, Texas, wept a relentless gray drizzle, mirroring the mood that clung to Liam Peterson like the damp chill penetrating his worn jacket. At 21, the final year of law school should have felt like a summit approached, a culmination. Instead, it was a precipice. Below him yawned an abyss of debt, student loans, the crushing medical bills from his mother's ongoing illness, his younger sister's looming tuition fees, and the shadowy, unspecified financial wreckage left behind by his late father, a man whose ambition had always outpaced his ethics. Each raindrop hitting the slick pavement seemed to echo the ticking clock, counting down to foreclosure, to eviction, to the complete unraveling of his family's fragile existence. He juggled classes, a mind-numbing data entry job that paid barely enough for groceries, and the constant, gnawing anxiety. The weight felt physical, pressing down on his shoulders as he trudged towards the campus library, the familiar sanctuary where he could momentarily escape into the structured logic of torts and contracts. His phone buzzed, a jarring intrusion into his preoccupied state. An unknown number. He almost ignored it, probably another creditor, but a flicker of obligation, perhaps ingrained by his legal training, made him answer. Liam Peterson speaking. Mr. Peterson. The voice on the other end was female, low, and possessed a cultured timbre that radiated quiet authority. It was a voice accustomed to being heard, to being obeyed. This is Vivienne Devereux. I understand you find yourself in challenging financial circumstances. Liam frowned, pulling his collar tighter against the rain seeping in. I'm sorry, who are you? And how do you know about my situation? The question came out sharper than intended, fueled by suspicion and a prickle of defensive pride. Let's just say I make it my business to know certain things, the voice replied smoothly, sidestepping the question. Your father and my late husband, they had dealings, unfortunate ones as it turned out. But that's periphery. I believe I can offer a solution to your current difficulties, a significant one. Intrigue warred with distrust. Vivienne Devereux. The name wasn't entirely unfamiliar. A reclusive local figure, whispered about in terms of old money and tragedy, the widow of Arthur Devereux, a once prominent businessman whose empire had collapsed years ago under scandalous circumstances, vaguely linked, Liam now recalled with a jolt, to his own father's less reputable ventures. A solution? Liam repeated, his voice tight. What kind of solution? One best discussed in person. Devereux Bistro. Tonight, 7 o'clock. It's on the square. There was no question in her tone, only command. Don't be late, Mr. Peterson. Time, as you are undoubtedly aware, is of the essence. The line clicked dead before Liam could formulate another question or a refusal. He stood frozen on the sidewalk, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, the cryptic call echoing in the damp air. Devereux Bistro was one of the most expensive restaurants in town, a place far removed from his reality of instant noodles and library vending machine coffee. Who was this woman? And what could she possibly want with him? Desperation, however, was a powerful motivator. The slimmest chance of alleviating the suffocating pressure was a lure too potent to ignore. That evening, dressed in his only presentable, slightly too tight suit, Liam pushed open the heavy oak door of Devereux Bistro. He was immediately enveloped in an atmosphere of hushed elegance, low lighting, crisp white tablecloths, the subtle clinking of silverware, and the murmur of quiet conversations. At a secluded corner table, bathed in the soft glow of a small lamp, sat Vivienne Devereux. She was striking, even more so than the faded society photos he'd hastily looked up online. Her silver hair was swept back in an elegant chignon, revealing sharp, intelligent features. She wore an impeccably tailored, deep emerald suit, understated pearls gleaming at her throat. Her posture was erect, radiating an aura of controlled power. Despite her age, she had to be 73. There was a vitality in her piercing blue eyes that surveyed him coolly as he approached. "Mr. Peterson," she greeted, gesturing to the chair opposite her with a slight inclination of her head. Her tone was polite, but devoid of warmth. "Thank you for coming." Liam sat, feeling clumsy and out of place. A waiter materialized instantly, pouring water. "Mrs. Devereux," he began, trying to match her composure, "you mentioned a solution?" "Direct, I appreciate that." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. She took a slow sip of her tea. "I'm aware of the full extent of your predicament, Mr. Peterson. The debts left by your father, the specific amounts, the creditors, your mother's medical expenses, your sister's upcoming university fees, your own student loans, your drowning." Liam felt a flush creep up his neck. Hearing his private burdens laid bare so clinically was deeply unsettling. "How?" "Irrelevant," she cut him off gently but firmly. "What matters is that I am prepared to eliminate these burdens, every single one. Consider them settled." Liam stared at her, dumbfounded. "Settled? Just like that? Why would you do that? What do you want in return?" This had to be some kind of cruel joke, or worse, a prelude to something illegal. Vivienne placed her teacup carefully back on its saucer. Her gaze met his, steady and unwavering. "I want you to marry me, Mr. Peterson." The words hung in the air, thick and unbelievable. Liam blinked, certain he'd misheard. A nervous, incredulous laugh escaped him. "Excuse me? Marry you?" "You heard correctly," she replied, her voice perfectly even. "Let me be unequivocally clear. This is not a proposal born of sentiment or affection. I harbor no romantic illusions, and I expect none from you. This is a contract, a business arrangement, if you will." Liam shook his head, trying to process the sheer absurdity. A business arrangement? Marriage? "Precisely. I require a husband, a legal spouse to bear my name, to be the nominal co-inheritor of my estate upon my passing, a legal necessity for reasons that needn't concern you now. You, Mr. Peterson, fit the criteria. You are young, legally unattached, intelligent enough to understand the terms, and, forgive my bluntness, desperate enough to seriously consider this proposition." He felt a surge of indignation mixed with the cold dread of his reality. "Criteria? You make it sound like I'm applying for a job." "In a manner of speaking, you are," she conceded coolly. "A position with extraordinary benefits, in exchange for fulfilling the simple legal requirement of being my husband, attending occasional social functions, maintaining appearances, signing necessary documents when required. I will immediately liquidate all your family's debts. Furthermore, I will establish a trust ensuring your mother's ongoing care, cover your sister's complete university education, and provide you with a generous stipend sufficient to complete your law degree without the need for part-time work. Upon graduation, a significant sum will be settled upon you, ensuring your financial independence. Think of it, Mr. Peterson, as a preemptive inheritance, contingent upon your agreement to the terms." Liam's mind raced. It was insane, utterly, terrifyingly insane. Yet the image of his mother's worried face, the mounting pile of final demand notices, the crushing weight lifting, it was a powerful temptation. "Why me?" he asked again, his voice barely a whisper. "There must be others." For the first time, a flicker of something deeper crossed Vivienne's face, a shadow of weariness, perhaps, or loneliness. "My reasons are my own, Mr. Peterson. Suffice it to say, your lineage makes you a particularly suitable candidate for my purposes. Your father played a role in the history that led me here. There's a certain symmetry to it that appeals to my sense of order." Her gaze sharpened again. "I need a companion in name only. Someone predictable, someone bound by contract, not emotion. Love is messy. Arrangements are clean. I have no living family, no heirs. My legacy, my estate. It requires a certain structure to protect it from external interests after I am gone. A husband provides that structure." He recoiled instinctively. "This is mercenary, cold." "Life can be cold, Mr. Peterson, as you well know." She leaned forward slightly. "I am offering you a lifeline, a complete reset. Freedom from the burdens that are crushing you and your family. All it requires is your signature on a marriage certificate and your discretion." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping harshly against the polished floor. His hands were trembling. I can't. This is wrong. I need to think." Vivienne settled back in her chair, seemingly unfazed. "Of course, prudence is commendable, but do not mistake my offer for charity, Mr. Peterson. It is a time-sensitive business proposal. The circumstances necessitating it will not wait indefinitely. You have 48 hours to decide. Contact my lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, his card." She slid a thick vellum card across the table. "He will handle the specifics if you accept. If I don't hear from you or him by 7 p.m. the day after tomorrow, the offer is rescinded. Permanently." Liam snatched the card and turned, stumbling slightly in his haste to escape the suffocating elegance of the bistro, the chilling proposition, and the unnerving gaze of Vivienne Devereux. He walked home in a daze, the rain having stopped, leaving behind gleaming streets and a heavy, humid air. The 48-hour deadline felt like a ticking bomb strapped to his chest. He found his mother, Helen, sitting at the small kitchen table, sorting through a pile of bills, her face etched with a familiar anxiety that tightened his own chest. She looked up as he entered, her attempt at a welcoming smile faltering under the weight of her worry. He couldn't bring himself to tell her immediately. They ate dinner in near silence, pasta with canned sauce, the usual fare. The unspoken tension of their financial situation hung between them. Finally, sitting opposite her at the table, the lawyer's card feeling heavy in his pocket, he recounted Vivienne Devereux's proposal, omitting the more unsettling details about legacy and his father's past, framing it purely as an eccentric, wealthy widow offering a bizarre, transactional escape route. Helen listened intently, her initial shock giving way to a complex mix of disbelief, hope, and maternal fear. She reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly as it covered his. "Liam. Oh, Liam. Marry her? A stranger? An old woman?" "It's just a contract, Mom. She made that clear. No expectations, just appearances. And in return?" He listed the benefits, the debts cleared, her medical care secured, Sarah's tuition paid, his own future salvaged. Each item felt like a weight being lifted, yet the cost felt immeasurable. Helen was quiet for a long time, her gaze distant. Liam saw the internal struggle, the conventional morality warring with the desperate relief the offer represented. "Your father," she finally said, her voice thick with old pain and weariness. "He left us in such a mess. I worry constantly. About you, about Sarah, about losing this house." She looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "I know it sounds unthinkable, Liam, wrong even, to marry for money, without love. But this woman, she's offering us a chance to breathe again. Is it so wrong to consider it, if it saves us?" Her words, her quiet desperation, mirroring his own, chipped away at his resolve. He wasn't just saving himself. He was potentially saving his mother from constant fear, saving his sister from abandoning her dreams. Was his pride, his sense of conventional morality, worth more than their security, their future? He wrestled with it throughout a sleepless night, the arguments circling endlessly. It felt like selling his soul, yet the alternative felt like condemning his family. The symmetry Vivienne spoke of felt perverse, his father's actions leading to this bizarre form of restitution through him. 47 hours later, his face pale but his jaw set, Liam stood once more before Vivienne Devereux, this time in the sterile, intimidatingly plush office of her lawyer, Mr. Abernathy. Vivienne sat opposite the large mahogany desk, looking as composed as ever, reviewing a document. Abernathy, a portly man with thinning hair and sharp eyes, watched Liam with professional detachment. "You've made your decision, Mr. Peterson?" Vivienne asked, not looking up immediately. Liam took a deep breath, the air tasting like dust and compromise. "Yes," his voice was hoarse. "I accept your terms." Vivienne finally lowered the document, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. "Excellent. Mr. Abernathy has the necessary agreements prepared. They are comprehensive." The signing felt surreal, detached. Clause after clause detailing financial transfers, non-disclosure agreements, residency requirements — he would live in her estate, in separate quarters — and the specific limited duties expected of him as her husband. It was cold, precise, and legally ironclad. He signed where indicated, his hand surprisingly steady. He had crossed a threshold. 1 week later, in a stark, impersonal judge's chamber at the courthouse, the ceremony took place. It was devoid of any trappings of a real wedding. No flowers, no music, no guests, save for Mr. Abernathy and a stern-faced notary acting as witnesses. Liam wore another suit provided by Vivienne, expensive, perfectly fitted, but feeling like a costume. Vivienne, elegant in a simple cream dress, stood beside him, radiating calm detachment. They exchanged the minimal, legally required vows. Liam's voice felt distant, automated. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Vivienne turned to him. There was no warmth in her eyes, only a cool assessment. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Peterson," she murmured, the formal address a stark reminder of the nature of their union. As they exited the courthouse into the persistent Texas drizzle, Liam caught his reflection in a rain-slicked window. The young man staring back looked hollowed out, older. Had he just secured his family's future, or had he irrevocably mortgaged his own? The weight of the question settled upon him heavier than any debt. The gates to the Devereux estate whispered open electronically, revealing a long, winding driveway flanked by ancient oak trees dripping with Spanish moss. At the end loomed the mansion, less a house, more a monument to bygone wealth and influence. It was a sprawling edifice of pale stone, with imposing columns, tall, dark-paned windows, and meticulously manicured grounds that seemed too perfect, too sterile. It exuded an air of grandeur, but also of profound isolation. Liam paid the cab driver, the fare feeling insignificant now, a relic of his former life. He pulled his suitcase, containing his few meager possessions, up the imposing stone steps. The heavy front door opened silently before he could even reach for the handle, revealing a man in a dark suit. Mr. Harris, the head butler, whose impassive face Liam vaguely recalled from a brief introduction at the lawyer's office. "Mr. Peterson," Harris greeted him, his voice a low, formal murmur. "Mrs. Devereux is waiting in the drawing room." Vivienne stood by a massive fireplace, a fragile teacup in her hand. She turned as he entered the cavernous room, filled with antique furniture, heavy drapes, and shadowed portraits that seemed to watch him from the walls. "Welcome, Liam," she said, the use of his first name sounding almost jarringly intimate after the formality. "I trust your transition will be smooth. Harris will show you to your rooms. They are in the West Wing, quite separate from my own." He nodded mutely. "Thank you, Vivienne." Using her first name felt equally strange. "Dinner is at 7:30 sharp in the main dining hall," she continued, turning back to the fireplace. "Punctuality is appreciated." The dismissal was clear. Harris led him through echoing hallways, past closed doors and silent, watchful staff who averted their gazes. His suite was larger than his entire family apartment. A king-sized bed draped in heavy silk, ornate antique furnishings, a marble bathroom, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a vast, sculpted garden. It was opulent, luxurious, yet utterly devoid of warmth or personality. It felt like a museum exhibit, or a very expensive hotel room where no one truly lived. Dinner was a strained affair. They sat at opposite ends of a ridiculously long mahogany table, the vast distance between them emphasizing their arrangement. The food, prepared by an unseen chef, was exquisite, served by silent staff who moved like ghosts. Vivienne made polite, impersonal conversation about the weather, a recent acquisition for her art collection, the state of the financial markets. Liam answered in monosyllables, feeling increasingly like an imposter, a prop in her solitary existence. He tried asking about her late husband, Arthur, hoping to find some common ground, some hint of the woman beneath the icy facade. "You mentioned my father and your husband had dealings?" Vivienne paused, her knife hovering over her perfectly cooked sea bass. She dabbed her lips delicately with a linen napkin. "They did. Arthur was trusting, perhaps too trusting for the world he inhabited. Your father, on the other hand, was driven by a different sort of engine." Her eyes met his across the table, a flicker of steel behind the calm blue. "Some ventures end poorly, Liam. Some debts linger long after the ledgers are closed." Her cryptic words sent a chill down his spine. "What do you mean?" "Simply that the past has long shadows," she replied smoothly, taking a sip of white wine. "You needn't concern yourself with ancient history. Focus on your studies. Fulfill your end of our agreement. That is all that is required." After dinner, Liam retreated to the vast, silent library, lined floor to ceiling with books he doubted anyone had opened in years. He felt a growing sense of unease. A prisoner in a gilded cage. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, pregnant with unspoken secrets. Over the next few days the feeling intensified. The staff remained distant, their hushed conversations ceasing abruptly whenever he approached. He caught snippets. "So young. Wonder if he knows. Just like the others. Her reasons." Fragments that coalesced into a disturbing pattern. Others? What others? He tried engaging Mr. Harris, hoping the butler's long tenure might yield some insight. "Mr. Harris," Liam began one afternoon, finding the older man polishing silver in the pantry, "this house, it feels—" Harris looked up, his expression unreadable. "It is a house with a history, Mr. Peterson." "Vivienne, Mrs. Devereux, she seems very—" Liam struggled for the right word. "Contained." Harris continued polishing, his movements precise. "Mrs. Devereux has endured a great deal, sir. Loss shapes people in different ways." He paused, then added, his voice barely above a whisper, "My advice, if I may be so bold. Attend to your studies, sir. Ask few questions. Some doors are best left unopened." The veiled warning only fueled Liam's suspicion. What was Vivienne hiding? What symmetry did his presence provide? And why did he feel like he was walking through a minefield? One rainy evening, unable to study, Liam found himself drawn to Vivienne's private study, a room he'd been implicitly discouraged from entering. The door was slightly ajar. Peeking inside, he saw Vivienne wasn't there. Her large antique desk was tidy, but a small ornate brass key lay beside a stack of leather-bound ledgers. It gleamed under the green-shaded desk lamp, intricate and unusual. His heart pounded. This had to be it. The key Harris had indirectly warned him about. Glancing nervously down the empty, shadowed hallway, Liam slipped into the study. The air smelled faintly of old paper and expensive perfume. He snatched the key. It felt cool and heavy in his palm. Where did it lead? He remembered a specific door at the far end of the west wing hallway, near his own suite, always locked, its handle tarnished differently from the others. Later that night, long after the house had settled into its customary deep silence, Liam stood before the locked door, the key clutched tightly in his hand. His breath hitched. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with a soft, well-oiled click that sounded deafening in the stillness. He pushed the door open slowly, revealing not a storage room but another study, frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the single beam of moonlight, slicing through a gap in the heavy velvet curtains. The air was thick with the scent of stale cigar smoke and decay. Unlike the rest of the meticulously maintained mansion, this room felt abandoned, neglected. A large masculine desk dominated the space, papers scattered across its surface as if the occupant had just stepped away. On a nearby table sat tarnished silver frames. Liam picked one up. A younger Vivienne, smiling arm in arm with a robust, kind-faced man. Arthur Devereux, undoubtedly. Another photo showed the Devereux couple laughing with another pair. Liam's breath caught. It was his parents, younger, seemingly happy, captured in a moment before everything had apparently gone wrong. His attention was drawn back to the desk. He carefully lifted a sheaf of papers, legal documents, business proposals, angry letters. His eyes scanned the pages, his blood running cold. They detailed failed real estate ventures, accusations of fraud, embezzlement, all directed at his father, signed by Arthur Devereux. There were desperate pleas for repayment, warnings of ruin. Then he found it, a thick, leather-bound diary tucked beneath a ledger. He hesitated for only a second before opening it. The handwriting was unmistakably Vivienne's, sharp and slanted, evolving over years. The early entries spoke of love for Arthur, of shared dreams. Then the tone shifted, darkening with worry about finances, about a charismatic but reckless business partner, Liam's father. October 17th. Robert Peterson assures Arthur the Arizona deal is solid gold. A is pouring everything into it. I have a bad feeling. RP is too slick, too charming. January 5th. The whispers are starting. Investors are pulling out. Robert is unreachable. Arthur looks gray. He's not sleeping. March 22nd. It's all gone. Robert vanished. The accounts are empty. Fraud, embezzlement. We are ruined. Arthur is devastated, blaming himself. April 10th. Arthur collapsed this morning. His heart. The doctor says the stress. Oh, God. Robert Peterson, you did this. You killed him as surely as if you'd used a gun. Liam felt sick. His father hadn't just left debts. He'd potentially destroyed lives, caused a man's death. He read on, the entries growing colder, more calculating. June 1st. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I will be patient. The Peterson family will pay. Not just Robert, but his legacy, his blood. Years later, May 3rd, found him, the son, Liam Peterson, law student, 21, struggling, burdened by the father's debts. Perfect. The irony is exquisite. He will be the instrument. August 12th. The plan is set, the marriage contract. He will live in this house, walk these halls, unknowingly paying the price for his father's sins. He will be my companion in name, a constant reminder, until I decide his purpose is fulfilled. He thinks he's getting a lifeline. He's stepping into a cage built from my grief. Beneath the diary lay another document, a predated marriage license application. His name and Vivienne's, dated 3 weeks before their first meeting at the bistro. She hadn't just seized an opportunity, she had orchestrated it meticulously. Finding your bedtime reading illuminating, Liam? Liam whirled around, dropping the diary with a thud. Vivienne stood silhouetted in the doorway, her voice dangerously soft, laced with ice. Guilt and fear warred with a rising tide of anger. You planned all this, he stammered, gesturing wildly at the desk, the diary. My father, Arthur. This isn't a business arrangement. This is revenge. Vivienne stepped fully into the room, her composure absolute, yet her eyes glittered with an intensity he hadn't seen before. Did you truly believe I would pluck a random student out of obscurity and shower him with wealth out of sheer eccentricity? Your father destroyed my husband, my life, my family's future. He left Arthur broken, and me empty. Did you think such actions carried no consequence? But I had nothing to do with it, Liam protested, his voice shaking. I was a child. Why punish me? Punish? Vivienne tilted her head, a slow, chilling smile spreading across her face. No, Liam. This isn't punishment. This is balance, restitution. Your father took everything from Arthur. It seems only fitting that his son should, in a way, restore it. You are living proof that the Peterson name can, eventually, settle its accounts. By trapping me? By lying to me? Using me as some kind of pawn in your sick game? You signed the contract, she reminded him, her voice hardening. You weighed the benefits against the perceived cost. You made a choice. Did you think freedom came without a price? Your father certainly didn't. She stepped closer, her presence commanding the small, dusty room. You are here Because I chose you to be here. You will fulfill the terms of our agreement. You will finish your studies, maintain appearances, and inherit a portion of my estate sufficient to ensure you never face the desperation your father inflicted upon us. Consider it hazard pay." "And what happens then?" Liam challenged, finding a sliver of defiance. "After you've had your balance, do I just walk away?" Vivienne's expression became unreadable. "We will cross that bridge when we come to it, Liam. Until then, I suggest you return to your rooms and refrain from exploring matters that do not concern you. This room," she swept a hand around the dusty space, "is off limits. Understand?" Liam stared at her, trapped between fury and the terrifying realization of his utter powerlessness. He had walked willingly into this. He backed out of the room, Vivienne's cold gaze following him, until he pulled the door shut, the click of the lock echoing his entrapment. Sleep was impossible. The diary's words, Vivienne's chilling confession, his father's devastating betrayal. It all churned in his mind. He wasn't just a party to a bizarre contract. He was a captive audience to Vivienne's long-simmering vengeance. He couldn't stay. He couldn't be her living monument to payback. But how could he leave? The contracts Abernathy had drafted were surely designed to make escape financially ruinous, if not legally impossible. He needed help. He thought of Peter, his sharpest friend from law school, the one who always saw angles others missed. The next day, feigning a need for study materials, Liam drove into town and met Peter at a noisy coffee shop off campus, the anonymity feeling safer. "Hypothetically," Liam began, stirring his coffee with unnecessary intensity, "if someone entered into a contract, say a marriage contract, based on significant fraudulent inducement or concealment of material facts by the other party, is there any way out?" Peter raised an eyebrow, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Hypothetically? Sure. Proving it is the trick. You need solid evidence of intentional misrepresentation or concealment that goes to the core of the agreement. Duress can sometimes work too, but financial desperation alone usually isn't enough unless it was directly exploited in an unconscionable way." "Why the morbid hypothetical, Liam? Trouble with that wealthy widow you mysteriously shacked up with?" News, even carefully guarded news, traveled fast in their small circle. Liam deflected, just kicking around ideas for a contracts paper, complex scenarios. He needed evidence. Hard evidence. His search became more systematic, more desperate. During the long afternoons when Vivienne was out, attending board meetings for charities, visiting galleries, or simply driving aimlessly, according to Harris, Liam risked returning to her main study. He sifted through files, scanned ledgers, looking for anything that might corroborate the diary, anything that could be used as leverage. He found it tucked away in a file marked Peterson Correspondence, Closed. It was a carbon copy of a letter Vivienne had written to his father years ago, shortly after Arthur's death. It was brutal, scathing, filled with raw grief and fury. It explicitly accused Robert Peterson of embezzlement, fraud, and moral responsibility for Arthur's demise. "You are a thief and a coward. You left us destitute. My husband's heart couldn't withstand the ruin you wrought. I swear to you, Robert Peterson, your name will be cursed and your legacy will pay for this." It was damning. But was it enough to break the contract? He also noticed recent financial statements detailing complex offshore accounts and investments that seemed borderline aggressive, perhaps even shady. Was Vivienne rebuilding her fortune through means as questionable as those his father had used? He confided his findings, carefully omitting the diary's existence, to Peter during another clandestine meeting. Peter listened intently, his legal mind clicking. Okay, the old letter shows motive, establishes her long-standing animosity, and supports the idea she wasn't upfront about the history. The concealment of that vendetta could be grounds for fraudulent inducement, Peter mused, but the real leverage might be the current stuff. If she's engaging in shady financial practices now, that's actionable. Tax evasion? Securities fraud? That gives you power, Liam, but it's dangerous. People like her don't get that rich and powerful by playing nice. You need undeniable proof. Liam knew Peter was right. He hired a discreet private investigator recommended by Peter using a chunk of his stipend. The investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Malone, worked quickly. Within a week, he delivered a slim file confirming the details of Liam's father's fraud and its direct impact on Arthur Devereux's financial collapse and subsequent death. More crucially, Malone had uncovered preliminary evidence suggesting irregularities in several of Vivienne's current international holdings, shell corporations, questionable transfers. It wasn't a smoking gun yet, but it was close. Vivienne, however, was no fool. She sensed the shift in Liam's demeanor, the subtle defiance replacing his earlier cowed acceptance. The air in the mansion grew thick with unspoken tension. One morning at breakfast, she fixed him with her penetrating gaze across the vast table. "You seem preoccupied lately, Liam. Restless. Exploring new interests, perhaps?" Liam froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. "Just focusing on my finals, Vivienne." "Are you?" A cold smile touched her lips. "Be careful what you search for. Sometimes finding answers leads to more complicated questions. And complications," her voice dropped slightly, "can be dealt with." The veiled threat hung in the air. Liam knew he was running out of time. He had to confront her, armed with what he knew. It was a gamble, but staying passive felt like slow suffocation. That evening, he waited for her in the grand drawing room, the investigator's report and the copy of her letter to his father tucked inside his jacket. When Vivienne entered, radiating her usual cool elegance, he stood to face her. "Vivienne, we need to talk." She paused, raising a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Indeed? What troubles you now, Liam?" He pulled out the documents, laying them on a polished mahogany table between them. "I know everything. About my father, Arthur, the fraud, about why you really married me. About this," he tapped the investigator's summary of her current finances. "This potential illegality." For the first time since he'd met her, Vivienne's composure cracked. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly, flicking from the papers to his face. A flash of fury, quickly masked, crossed her features. "You had me investigated? After everything I've done for you?" "Everything you've done to me, you mean?" Liam shot back, his voice rising, fueled by months of suppressed fear and anger. "This was never about helping me. It was about using me, revenge for what my father did." "And did he not deserve it?" Vivienne's voice was dangerously low. "Did Arthur deserve to die penniless and broken-hearted because of your father's greed? Did my family deserve ruin? You speak of being used. Your father used Arthur's trust, his friendship, and discarded him like trash." "And your solution is to become like him?" Liam challenged, stepping closer. "To perpetuate the cycle? Ruining my life won't bring Arthur back. Hurting me won't heal you. Look at this place." He gestured around the opulent room. "It's a mausoleum. You're living in a tomb built of bitterness." Vivienne flinched, as if struck. The accusation hit a nerve. Her shoulders sagged slightly, the icy facade momentarily melting to reveal a glimpse of profound, weary sadness beneath. Arthur? He was a good man," she whispered, her gaze distant. "Too good for this world, too good for men like your father." She looked at Liam, then, a strange mix of resentment and something else. "Recognition? You have his fire, you know." "Arthur's, that stubborn sense of justice. I didn't expect that." A tense silence fell. Liam felt a pang of unexpected empathy for the grieving woman hidden beneath the vengeful matriarch. "Vivienne," he said, his voice softening slightly, "it doesn't have to be this way. Let this go. Let me go. Before this consumes you completely. Before you cross lines you can't uncross." He indicated the financial report. Before Vivienne could respond, the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway echoed through the large windows, followed by the authoritative slam of car doors. Moments later, Mr. Harris appeared in the doorway, his usual impassivity replaced by alarm. Behind him stood 2 uniformed police officers and, to Liam's surprise, Peter, looking grim. "Vivienne Devereux," one of the officers said, stepping forward. "We have a warrant for your arrest on suspicion of multiple counts of financial fraud and conspiracy." Vivienne's head snapped towards Liam, her eyes blazing with betrayal. You? Liam met her gaze, his heart heavy, but his resolve firm. He hadn't called them directly, but Peter, alarmed by the potential illegalities Liam had described and fearing for his friend's safety, had taken the preliminary evidence to the authorities himself. You left me no choice, Vivienne. It had to end. As the officers gently but firmly escorted her towards the door, Vivienne paused, looking back at Liam one last time. The fire was back in her eyes, but mixed with a chilling weariness. You think you've won, Liam? Be careful. Revenge is a hungry ghost. It consumes everything, eventually. Don't let it consume you too. Watching her being led away from the cold grandeur of the mansion, Liam felt not triumph, but a profound sense of emptiness and sorrow. He had exposed the truth, broken the cycle, and freed himself. But Vivienne's final words lingered, a cold premonition in the silent, echoing halls. The trial was less dramatic than Liam had anticipated. Faced with the mounting evidence uncovered by a full-scale investigation, spurred by Peter's initial report and Malone's findings, Vivienne, advised by Abernathy, accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to several counts of fraud related to her more recent, aggressive financial dealings aimed at rebuilding her lost fortune, the ones Malone had started to uncover. The older issues involving Liam's father were too far in the past to prosecute directly, but they served as powerful background context. Liam testified, sticking strictly to the facts of their arrangement and his discovery of her motives and the financial irregularities. He didn't seek vengeance, only truth. His testimony focused on the contractual fraud and his own unwitting role, alongside the financial evidence, likely contributed to a sentence that, while significant, was less than the maximum. He saw Vivienne watching him during his testimony, her expression unreadable, but lacking the earlier bitterness. Weeks after the sentencing, Liam was summoned back to the estate by Mr. Abernathy. The mansion felt different now, still imposing but hollow, like a discarded shell. Abernathy presented him with legal documents. Surprisingly, Vivienne had instructed that the terms of their contract concerning his own financial settlement be honored, despite everything. She had also added a codicil. Mrs. Devereux has deeded this estate to you, Liam, Abernathy said, his tone neutral. And she left this letter. Liam took the heavy cream envelope, recognizing Vivienne's elegant script. He opened it later, sitting alone on a bench by the campus lake. Liam, prison affords one ample time for reflection. For years, I believed vengeance was the only balm for the wound left by Arthur's death. Justice, I called it. But justice twisted into obsession becomes its own prison, long before any bars appear. My plan was meticulously crafted, fueled by decades of grief and anger. Bringing you here, binding you to me, it was meant to be the final act of balancing the scales your father tipped so disastrously. A symmetry, as I told you, but I did not account for you, for the man you are, so different from your father, your quiet resistance, your refusal to be merely a pawn, your eventual confrontation, not with malice, but with a demand for truth, forced me to see the woman I had become, someone almost as ruthless as the man I despised. You reminded me of Arthur, not in appearance, but in spirit, his fundamental decency. It was disconcerting and ultimately disarming. This house became a monument to my pain. It should not remain so. It was never truly about the money itself, not after the initial devastation. It was about the injustice. Perhaps now it can be used for something better. I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I hope you can find a path forward unburdened by the shadows of your father or by me. Use the resources provided wisely. Break the cycle. Vivienne Liam read the letter twice, a complex mix of emotions swirling within him, relief, sadness, and a strange sense of closure. He sold the Devereux estate. The sprawling mansion held too many ghosts. The proceeds were substantial. First, he paid off every cent of his family's debt, ensuring his mother's medical care and his sister Sarah's full university education. The look of pure, unadulterated relief on his mother's face was worth more than the entire estate. With the significant remaining funds after consulting with Peter, Liam made a decision that felt both right and necessary. He established the Arthur Devereux Memorial Scholarship Fund, dedicated to providing second chances for students facing overwhelming financial hardship, particularly those impacted by financial fraud or family misfortune. It was a way to honor the man indirectly wronged by his father and used as a justification by Vivienne, turning the balance she sought into something constructive. Liam returned to law school, no longer burdened by crippling debt or family anxieties, but driven by a renewed sense of purpose. He focused on ethics, on pro bono work, determined to use his knowledge to help those entangled in situations not unlike his own or Vivienne's, those caught in the devastating fallout of others' actions. He never saw Vivienne again, though he heard through Abernathy that she was participating in educational programs in prison, tutoring inmates. He never forgot her parting warning, the cautionary tale of how grief could curdle into vengeance. But he also carried the memory of her final letter, the acknowledgement of shared humanity, the possibility of change even in the darkest circumstances. One crisp autumn afternoon, years later, Liam stood addressing the first recipients of the Arthur Devereux Scholarship. He spoke not of revenge or bitterness, but of resilience, second chances, and the importance of turning painful legacies into positive action. As he looked out at the hopeful faces before him, he felt the last vestiges of the shadow lift. He had walked through darkness, navigated a treacherous inheritance, and emerged into the light, not unscathed, but whole and finally free. The sky above was clear and blue. What do you think? Would you have made the same choice as Liam in his desperate situation? Could you ever understand or even forgive Vivienne's long-held desire for revenge? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If stories exploring complex moral dilemmas, the weight of the past, and the possibility of redemption resonate with you, please consider subscribing to our channel. We bring you thought-provoking narratives like this regularly. Don't miss out.